The Galactic Empire was celebrating. After years of fierce war, they had finally captured the last human strongholds in the sector. Their fleet, the most powerful in the galaxy, had crushed everything in its path. Now, only a few scattered human ships remained easy targets for the Empire's mighty forces. The Empire's leaders were confident. They believed they had finally won inside the Grand Hall of the Imperial Command. The Empire's generals and admirals gathered around a large holographic table watching the latest reports. The hologram displayed human ships drifting aimlessly, their energy levels low, their weapons barely functioning. The Empire had destroyed everything that could pose a threat. The Empire's leader, Emperor Kaldar, smiled as he looked at his officers. The human rebellion, which had lasted for so long, had come to an end. "We've done it," Emperor Kaldar said with pride. "Humanity is no longer a threat to the galaxy. Let's prepare for the final victory celebrations." But not everyone was so sure. General Tyros, an older officer who had seen countless battles, looked up from the hologram. His face was serious. "There's something I don't understand," General Tyros said quietly. Emperor Kaldar raised an eyebrow. "What is it, Tyros?" The general pointed at the hologram. "These human ships, look at them closely. Damaged, yes, but not destroyed. They seem to be waiting for something." The room fell silent. One of the younger officers, Lieutenant Cerrone, laughed. "General, they're clearly broken. They've got nothing left. They're just a few stragglers. We've won." But General Tyros wasn't convinced. He had learned long ago never to ignore the small details. He had fought against the humans before, and their resourcefulness always surprised him. "Trusted. We've underestimated them before. I think they're planning something." Emperor Kaldar dismissed the general's concerns with a wave of his hand. "There's nothing left to worry about. The humans are finished. This war is over." Others in the room nodded in agreement, but General Tyros still felt uneasy. He decided to investigate further. Later that evening, after the celebrations had begun, Tyros ordered his officers to monitor the last few human ships closely. They continued to drift through space, seemingly doing nothing. However, one signal caught his attention. It was a faint message, barely readable through the static. It had been sent from one of the human ships to a nearby fleet. Tyros listened carefully, his eyes narrowing. The message was short, but its meaning was clear. The real army has not yet arrived. The general's heart skipped a beat. Couldn't understand? The humans were clearly defeated. How could they have more forces waiting? Tyros knew the Empire had destroyed most of the human fleet. It was impossible that they had been hiding another army all this time. But the message seemed to suggest something else. Tyros immediately called for a meeting with his officers. They gathered in a dark, quiet room, far from the celebrations. "I just intercepted a strange message," he said, his voice tense. "Humans claim their true army has not yet arrived." The officers looked at each other, skeptical. Lieutenant Cerrone shook his head. "General, you're worrying over nothing. Humans are finished. We've won." But Tyros was not convinced. "I've seen the way they fight. They always have something hidden. We cannot afford to let our guard down. If they have another fleet, we need to be ready." "I think you're overthinking this," said Captain Velda, one of the Empire's younger commanders. "The humans have nothing left. There's no army coming. We've crushed them." Tyros stared at her. "You don't understand." The message was not a warning. It was a statement. They're preparing for something. We need to find out what it is. Kaldar's voice suddenly boomed through the room, and everyone turned to face the screen. "General Tyros, I have made my decision," the Emperor said coldly. "You will not waste any more time on this. There is no human army. Do not make me repeat myself." Tyros felt a heavy weight on his chest. The Emperor's words were final. There was no way to challenge the Emperor's authority, yet Tyros could not shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As the meeting ended, Tyros made a decision. He would investigate further, no matter what. The Empire had believed it had crushed humanity for good, but Tyros knew better. He had seen the cunning of the humans before. Something wasn't right. As he left the room, Tyros looked out into the vast emptiness of space. The stars shimmered. In the distance, cold and indifferent, deep down, he had a feeling that the true test was just beginning. Captain Velda walked through the bustling corridors of the Imperial command ship, her boots clicking against the polished floor. She had just come from a meeting with General Tyros, and she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling he had left her with. His warning about the human fleet still being a threat seemed to her like an overreaction. The Empire had destroyed most of humanity's forces. What could they possibly have left? The captain entered her office and sat at her desk, staring at the holographic reports from the battle earlier that day. She scrolled through the images of the defeated human ships. They were damaged, drifting, powerless. There was no sign of any hidden fleet, no trace of another human force waiting in the shadows. It seemed clear to her that Tyros was wrong. The humans were finished, but as she looked at the reports, something caught her eye. One human ship, a small freighter, had veered away from the rest. It was heading in the opposite direction, away from the Empire's fleet. She wasn't sure why it mattered, but something about it felt strange. Why would a damaged ship move alone into the unknown, especially when the Empire's fleet was so close? Captain Velda leaned forward, her curiosity getting the better of her. She sent a quick request to her officers to track the ship's course. After a moment, a reply came through. The ship was moving toward an uncharted area of space, an area the Empire had only briefly surveyed. There were no records of any civilizations in that part of space, which only made the situation more puzzling. Without thinking, Velda made a decision. She would follow the ship. If the humans were trying to hide something, this freighter could be the key. She quickly gathered a small team of officers, including Lieutenant Saran, who had been one of the most vocal in dismissing General Tyros's concerns. Together, they would find out if there was more to this story than they had been led to believe. As they boarded their own ship, sleek and powerful Imperial vessel, Velda couldn't shake the nagging feeling that they were missing something important. The Empire had been so certain of victory, but what if the human message was true? What if the real army was still out there, preparing to strike? The journey to the uncharted area of space was long and uneventful. Crew kept busy with routine tasks, but Velda noticed that Lieutenant Saran seemed uneasy. She had been quiet since they left the Imperial command ship. Finally, as they neared the edge of the known galaxy, Saran spoke up. "Captain," said his voice low, "do you really believe this? That the humans have another army out there?" Velda hesitated before answering. "I don't know. But I've seen the humans do things no one expects. Cannot ignore the possibility that we've missed something. It's better to investigate than to ignore it." Saran nodded, but still looked uncertain. "I just don't see how it's possible. We've crushed their fleets, taken their planets. What could they possibly have left?" Velda glanced out the window at the vast expanse of space before replying. "Sometimes people can surprise you, even when you think they've lost everything." They continued their journey into the unknown, moving deeper into the uncharted area. As they approached the coordinates where the human ship had been heading, the sensors began to pick up strange readings. It was a low-level signal, but it was definitely coming from somewhere nearby. "This is it," Velda said, her voice tense. "Prepare yourselves. Whatever's out there, we're going to find it." The crew braced themselves as the ship approached the source of the signal. The sensors now showed an enormous structure hidden within an asteroid field. It was unlike anything the Empire had encountered before. The structure was old, decayed, but it was massive, far larger than any known human ship. Its design was unfamiliar, built with materials that didn't match anything in the Empire's records. It was as though it had been abandoned for centuries, yet it still hummed with life as Velda's ship drew closer. Her crew was silent, staring at the strange structure on their screens. The ship's systems tried to analyze the structure, but the data came back corrupted, as if something was interfering with their sensors. "Captain, what is this?" Lieutenant Saran asked, his voice filled with awe and confusion. "I don't know," Velda replied, "but it's definitely not what we expected." The ship's computer detected a small opening in the structure, just big enough for a ship of their size to enter. Velda gave the command to approach, and they slowly maneuvered their vessel inside. The interior of the structure was vast and empty, filled with corridors and rooms that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. The walls were covered in strange markings, symbols that no one on the crew could identify. It looked like some sort of forgotten place, abandoned long ago. As they ventured deeper into the structure, they came across something unexpected: a large hangar bay, and inside, dozens of human ships, perfectly preserved and waiting. These ships were different from the ones the Empire had seen before. They were sleek, powerful, and their technology was unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered. It was clear now that these ships were the true force the humans had been. Hiding, Velda's heart raced as she realized what this meant. The message from the human ship had been true. The real army had not yet arrived. It was here, waiting in secret. And now it was ready to fight. The Empire had no idea what they were about to face. The discovery inside the ancient structure was a turning point. Captain Velda stood at the edge of the hangar, staring in awe at the fleet of hidden human ships. There were no signs of life, no human soldiers in sight. The ships were perfectly maintained, their sleek designs untouched by time. It was as though they had been waiting for something, perhaps the moment when the Empire's forces would grow too confident. Velda's mind raced as she analyzed the situation. The Empire had believed that humanity was broken, had underestimated the human spirit, the ingenuity that had kept them fighting even when it seemed like all was lost. And now, in the depths of an unknown part of space, Velda had uncovered the truth. The humans had been waiting hidden, ready for the right time to strike back. Lieutenant Sauron stood beside her, his face pale as he examined the ships. "Captain, what are we looking at here?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "These ships," Velda replied slowly, "they were never destroyed. They were hidden. The humans weren't finished. They've been preparing for this moment, waiting for the Empire to drop its guard." The realization hit Sauron hard. "We've been fools." "Maybe," Velda muttered, still staring at the ships. "But now we have a chance to stop them before it's too late." The captain turned and gave orders to her crew. They needed to learn more about the ships, how they worked, where the humans were at, and if there were more hidden fleets scattered across the galaxy. But even as Velda made her plans, the gravity of the situation began to sink in. The Empire had believed it was in control, but now, with this new revelation, everything was at risk. As they moved deeper into the structure, they found more surprises. Small storage rooms were filled with supplies, weapons, food, and parts for ship repairs. It seemed as though the humans had been preparing not just for a war, but for a long campaign. The ships, though old by Empire standards, were still equipped with advanced technology, energy shields, stealth capabilities, and weapons that could tear through the strongest Imperial defenses. Velda gathered her officers in the central command room, a space filled with displays of human technology. "This is it," she said, looking at the crew. "Humans have been biding their time. We thought we'd wiped them out, but they've been rebuilding. We have to warn the Empire." But even as she spoke, a new message appeared on the screens. It was from the same human ship that had led them here. The message was brief, but its meaning was clear. "We are ready. Prepare for war." The crew exchanged worried glances. The Empire had thought the war was nearly over, but now it seemed as though they were only at the beginning of a much larger conflict. "I'm going to send a report to the Emperor," Velda said, her voice steady. "We need reinforcements, and we need them fast." As she prepared the message, she couldn't help but wonder if the Empire would listen. Would they believe that the humans were truly a threat again, or would they continue to underestimate them? Meanwhile, Lieutenant Sauron was busy scanning the human ships. He found something that made his blood run cold. One of the ships had been recently activated. It wasn't just a dormant vessel waiting for a crew. It was alive, active, and ready for battle. "Captain," Sauron called out, his voice full of urgency. "We've got a problem. One of these ships is on the move. It's powering up." Velda's heart raced. "How is that possible?" "We haven't seen any humans around." Sauron quickly ran the scans. "It's not just one ship. They're all waking up. The fleet's activating itself." Velda's mind raced as she tried to think of a plan. The Empire had nothing like these ships. If they attacked now, they might not stand a chance. We need to get out of here. We need to warn the Empire before they launch an attack. Get us back to the ship. But as the crew scrambled to leave, a new threat emerged. The hangar doors began to close, locking them inside the structure. A mechanical sound echoed throughout the hangar, followed by a low hum. The humans had triggered some sort. A defense system designed to keep intruders out. We're trapped, Saran shouted, his voice full of panic. Velda cursed under her breath. We're not trapped. We're just not leaving yet. Get to the controls and figure out how to open those doors. We can't waste any more time. The crew rushed to the control panels, trying to override the lockout. But the system was old and complicated, and every attempt to open the doors failed. The hum grew louder, the structure seeming to pulse with life. Captain Lieutenant, Saran said, I think we've triggered a security protocol. Not just the door zits, the whole structure. We might be dealing with an entire automated defense system. Velda's mind raced. The humans had planned everything with such precision. It was clear now that this wasn't just a fleet of ships waiting to be used. It was a carefully crafted trap, a plan designed to lure the Empire into a false sense of security. And now the humans were about to strike, as Velda and her crew struggled to find a way out. The walls of the hangar started to shake. The ancient structure was waking up. The hidden fleet of human ships powered up, one by one. Velda could feel the weight of the moment bearing down on her. The Empire had no idea what was coming. The war was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. The sound of the hangar doors closing echoed through the structure, and the crew felt the weight of the situation settle over them like a thick fog. Captain Velda paced back and forth, her mind racing as she tried to think of a way out. The automated defense systems of the ancient structure were locking them in, and there was no time to waste. Captain Lieutenant Saran said, his voice tense, I can't override the security. The system's too advanced for us to crack. We need to figure out another way to open the doors. Velda looked at the control panels, frustration building inside her. She had faced countless challenges in her career, but this felt different. The Empire had been so sure that humanity had been crushed, so confident that they had won. Now, standing in the middle of a hidden fleet, she realized how wrong they had been. The humans had always been underestimated. We need to stay calm, Velda said, trying to steady her breath. Keep working on those controls, Saran. The rest of you, check the ship's systems. See if we can find another way out. The crew scrambled to follow their orders, but the room felt heavy with the threat that surrounded them. The hum in the walls grew louder, almost as if the structure itself was coming to life. It was a chilling sound, like the deep pulse of a heartbeat filling the air and making the crew feel even more trapped. I don't like this, said Captain Velda, more to herself than anyone else. We're not alone here. The humans have to be watching us. This place is too well protected. Too well hidden. They've been planning for this moment. A low voice came from Lieutenant Saran. Captain, I think I've got it. The hangar doors, there's a secondary release mechanism. It's old, but it could work. Then open it, Lieutenant Velda commanded. In her own voice, the pressure of the situation mounting, Saran quickly worked at the console, typing in commands, his fingers moving as quickly as they could. He paused, glancing nervously at Velda. It's not working. There's a secondary security lock on the release. We'll need to go deeper into the structure to disable it. It's in the central control room. Then we'll go there, Velda said, her tone firm. We don't have a choice now. With no other option, Velda led her team through the dark corridors of the massive structure. The air was thick and cold, the only sound the quiet footsteps of the crew moving carefully. Through the halls, the walls of the structure seemed to pulse, as though the place was alive. Watching them, as they reached the central control room, the door slid open with a low, mechanical groan. Inside, the room was dimly lit, filled with ancient computers and unfamiliar technology. The hum of energy was louder here, and it felt almost as if the room itself was alive. It's waiting for something to happen. Lieutenant Saran quickly went to work on the central console, trying to access the system. I think we found it, he said, his voice filled with a mix of excitement and fear. "There's a main control panel that overrides the locks, but it's going to take a few minutes." Velda nodded, her mind racing. They were so close. But then, something unexpected happened. A new message appeared on the screen, one that made Velda's heart skip a beat. "Your time is running out." The message was simple, but the meaning was clear. The humans knew they were there. They were watching. They had no intention of letting Velda and her crew escape without a fight. The captain gritted her teeth. "Sauron, hurry. We don't have much time before they launch their fleet." Sauron nodded and continued working, his fingers flying over the console. The hum of energy in the room grew louder, and the crew felt the pressure building, as if they were in the eye of a storm. Outside the control room, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hall, distant, but growing closer. The crew stiffened, their weapons ready, as they prepared for the worst. It wasn't just the structure that was waking up, it was the humans. Then, as if on cue, the door to the control room slammed shut, locking them inside. "Captain, we've got company." Lieutenant Sauron shouted, his voice filled with urgency. The crew's eyes widened as the lights flickered and the walls around them began to move. Suddenly, they were surrounded by shadows, figures that appeared from the dark corners of the room. The humans had arrived. Velda raised her weapon and stepped forward, trying to steady her nerves. "Stay calm. We're in their territory now. Don't make any moves until we know what they want." The figures that emerged from the shadows were not the usual soldiers Velda had encountered. These humans were different, calm, controlled, and wearing uniforms that were unlike any military she had ever seen. Their movements were precise, almost as if they were part of a larger plan. One of the humans stepped forward, a woman with dark hair and piercing eyes. She didn't speak at first, simply watching Velda and her crew as if waiting for something. Finally, she spoke. "You've discovered our fleet," the woman said, her voice cold and measured. "But you've only seen the beginning." Velda's heart pounded in her chest. This was not what she had expected. The humans had not only survived, they had thrived. Now they were ready to strike back. "We will not let the Empire control this galaxy any longer," the woman continued, her voice full of authority. "The true war begins now." Captain Velda stood at the center of the control room, surrounded by the mysterious human soldiers. Her hand tightened around the grip of her weapon, but she remained still, watching the leader of the humans, an older woman with sharp features and cold eyes, step closer. The woman spoke again, her voice unwavering. "You came looking for a fleet. You found it. But now you will learn what true power means." Velda's mind raced. The humans, it seemed, had not only survived, they had planned. She could feel the weight of her mistakes pressing down on her. The Empire had dismissed humanity as weak, defeated. It had been wrong. And now, in this moment, the Empire faced a new enemy, one that would not be easily defeated. The human leader looked at Velda, reading her every move. "The Empire has spread its lies across the galaxy," she said. "We are not the weak ones. You are." Velda met the woman's gaze, her mind struggling to understand the full scope of the situation. The humans had been hiding, rebuilding their strength, and now they were ready to reclaim the galaxy. "What do you want?" Velda asked, her voice steady, despite the uncertainty rising in her chest. The woman didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked past Velda, nodding to her soldiers. They moved quickly, stepping toward the control panels, their movements precise and deliberate. A few moments later, the lights in the room dimmed slightly, and the hum of energy from the structure grew louder. "We don't want war," the human leader said, finally answering Velda's question. "But the Empire forced our hand. We have no choice now." Velda's thoughts raced. The Empire had thought it was safe, that they had crushed humanity once and for all. But the humans had been waiting. They had prepared, hidden in the shadows, biding their time. And now, the Empire would face the consequences of underestimating them. "You're not the only ones who have been planning," Velda said, though doubt crept into her voice. The Empire had always believed it was invincible. They had the largest fleet, the most advanced weapons. But these humans, these hidden survivors, had something the Empire didn't. The element of surprise. The human leader turned her attention back to Velda. The time for secrets is over. The Empire will learn that you cannot control what you don't understand. We will no longer be oppressed. Is that why you've been hiding all this time? Velda asked, her voice tinged with frustration. You could have fought back before. Why wait until now? The woman's expression softened slightly, but there was no hint of sympathy in her eyes. Because we needed to rebuild. We needed to learn from the past. If we had fought sooner, we would have been crushed. But now we are ready. We have the technology, the strength, and the will to defeat you. Velda's grip on her weapon loosened slightly, but she didn't lower it. You think you can defeat the Empire? She asked, disbelief in her voice. The human leader nodded slowly. We don't think. We know. Before Velda could respond, the lights in the room flickered again. The structure trembled slightly as the hum grew louder, vibrating through the walls. The hangar doors suddenly opened, revealing rows of ships sleek, powerful, and fully operational. Velda's breath caught in her throat. These were not the weak, broken human ships the Empire had destroyed years ago. These were advanced vessels, equipped with technology far beyond what the Empire had seen. The humans had been hiding an entire fleet, one that was ready to strike. The human leader stepped forward again. The Empire has spread fear throughout the galaxy, but fear is not power. Power is knowing that the fight has just begun. Velda took a step back, her mind struggling to process the situation. Her crew had thought they were walking into a trap. But now, it was clear. This wasn't a trap. This was the beginning of something much larger. You can't do this, Velda said, her voice wavering for the first time. The Empire won't fall. You can't defeat us. Duh. The human leader looked at her with a mixture of pity and determination. You never understood, did you? The Empire has been built on lies, on the false belief that you are untouchable. The truth is, your power is built on fear. And fear will never hold against true strength. Velda's heart sank. She had been part of that power, part of the Empire. That had controlled the galaxy with an iron fist. But now, standing in this ancient structure, facing a fleet of ships that should have been impossible, she realized the truth. The Empire's strength was fragile, and the humans who had once been dismissed as weak had learned to survive, to grow stronger, and to fight. The human leader stepped forward once more. The Empire's over. The galaxy belongs to those who can stand up and fight. And we are ready. Before Velda could speak again, the lights in the control room flickered one last time. The human fleet powered up, engines roaring to life as they prepared to launch. Velda and her crew were no longer in control. Tables had turned. As the human leader turned to leave, she spoke over her shoulder. You have one choice, Captain. You can join us, or you can stand in our way. But either way, the war has already begun. Velda stood frozen in place, watching as the human fleet began to lift off, moving into position, ready to strike at the heart of the Empire. There was no more time for planning, no more time for hesitation. The humans had waited long enough. Now, the galaxy would never be the same.